What's up, y'all boys? We are back again. Let's see if we can get that glare out of the camera here. It's not gonna be perfect, but here's what I am going to say is that we are doing a quarterback tier list now. Back again. We have done a running back tier list so far, as well as a whole team tier list. So I know the order is a little janky, but please let me know in the comments which one you want to see next specifically. What tier list would really get you going? What do you want? Would you like wide receivers? Would you like tight ends? We could do defense tier list. We could do position specific, like a corner as a safety, DB as a whole, linebacker, edge rusher. We could do all sorts of things here, and we can really get something interesting going. Talk about all sorts of players, but today we're doing the quarterback specifically, and this is actually an updated 23-24 one, and it actually includes a lot of the guys that are going to be drafted. So anywhere from Will Levis, Hendon Hooker to I think we got Bryce Young here as well as CJ Stroud as well. Yep. I don't think there's anyone else. And is Anthony Richardson in this? He may or may not be. I'm not sure. We'll see as we're going. I'm not going to look through this too crazily, but oh yeah, he is right here. But that way we can have an updated look at what I think these rookies are going to look like as far as this next year. Now, to specify, especially for the rookies and young quarterbacks out there, this is not what I think their career is going to look like. This is specifically just for the 2023 to 2024 season. So, with that in mind, we can get started here and just realize again, yeah, it's not based on just potential, it's based on who is right now going to be what tier of quarterback. So, yeah, we got anywhere from S to D. If you aren't familiar with tier lists, S is the best, D is the worst. S is going to be reserved for the elite, so likely only the top 5 or so quarterbacks are going to be here. And then we got A, which is a very good plus quarterback, above average starter, probably the top 10 to 12 range. We'll see how it kind of fills out. But yeah, B, you're just an average starter, very normal kind of guy. C, low end starter slash maybe a strong backup. A high end backup could end up in C. But low end starter, high end backup kind of guy is what we're looking at there. And then D is specifically you're only a backup level player, or you haven't done anything in the league, like you haven't played a game, and we just don't know about you, but you look like a backup so far. But that's what we're gonna look like right now. So let's get going, baby. Starting off right away, Josh Allen. I mean, what else is there to say? He's easily a top 5 quarterback. You could argue anywhere from 2 to 5, I believe, but he's a top 5 quarterback. I'm not going to argue the order too much, but he's a great player. Everyone knows it. Those are contenders every year for a reason. I think that it'd be great to see him get over the hump, but he's a great player. Baker, he's going to go in the C tier. He's going to be the first guy that I think is a low end starter, high end backup. I mean, if he's a backup quarterback on your team, I know people give Baker a lot of crap, but if he's a backup, he's a great backup. If he's a starter, he's a low end starter. I mean, he's kind of your gap guy, which I think is what he is for the Buccaneers this year. He's just kind of there to play his role, start, and we'll see what happens. But I don't think he'll be great. But low end starter, that's great. Joe Burrow, I think, again, right up there in the S tier. And to clarify again, these aren't rankings in order here among tiers. It's just groupings of what tier they fall into. So I'm not saying when I put Joe Burrow here, I'm not saying Joe Burrow is definitively, better than Josh Allen. I'm just saying he's an S tier quarterback along with Josh Allen. Perfect. Derek Carr, I think he's a B tier quarterback. He's a good starter, normal. He's not going to hurt your team if he's starting for you, but I don't think he's going to elevate your team. And I think, guys that are anywhere from A and S, you have to be a guy who I can confidently say I could see throwing for 30 touchdowns, that kind of or, at least having a huge contribution to a team between running and throwing football. So again, Derek Carr, like some people, especially Saints fans, might care a little bit more about this, but it's not a bad thing on him. It's just he's just a normal player. I think he's a solid quarterback, a solid starter. He has good talent. I mean, if he went crazy, I could see him going to the low end of A tier, but for now, I think he's just outside the top, 10 to 12 range of quarterbacks. I think he's an above average middle pack quarterback. Matt Corral, we haven't seen anything of, so I can't do anything other than put him in D. Don't know what else his future is going to hold, but I think at a minimum he'll spend a few years in the league as a backup, but hopefully he gets a shot and can be healthy at one point to get a shot to be a starter. We'll see. Dak is hard for me because I think he's a little overhyped sometimes, and I think he's underrated sometimes. So right now, Dak is at a minimum going to be high end of B. He might be the single best B tier quarterback of like the top of like the average quarterbacks. But for now, I'm going to put him as A because I think he could be a low end A tier quarterback, where because he lights it up sometimes, and other times he lets you down. But we'll see if the list plays on. I think he needs to be B. I'll move him, but for now, A I think is a low end A seems right for him. Andy Dalton I think is high end C tier quarterback. Truthfully, I think gap between B and C can be it's a decent gap sometimes, but the high end C to low end B I think will be a very close margin. Andy Dalton's kind of that guy. I think his career he's a B tier quarterback for his basically whole career, but I think he is kind of just a low end starter, really good backup at this point in his career, and that's there's no issue with that, but that's where he sits. Sam Darnold, I think he's in the same field as Baker as far as how I view them. I think if he's starting for your team, he's not going to elevate you. But he isn't, he's not the worst situation. If he's a backup, he's a really solid backup for you with a high draft pedigree. So props to him in that instance. But I think he'll be a backup for the Niners this year. I don't think that's a shocking statement, but I think he's a good backup at minimum. Daniel Jones, I think people are going to be pissed that I'm not going to put him in A, but I think he's a B tier quarterback. Nothing wrong with him. I mean, he's done a lot better at minimizing the turnovers, and he's brought upside with his legs, but I don't think he's a guy that's elevating that Giants team. It's very much, I think, Saquon's show. And this, no offense to Daniel, he's just in a system that allows him to, play with his limitations. But if he takes a step forward, maybe he has the physical talent to be a low end A tier quarterback. But for now, he's a good B tier quarterback. He's a solid starter. I don't feel anything too passionate other than that. Justin Fields, I'd argue, has been a high end C tier quarterback the last couple of years. I think he's moving into the B tier this year. So it's going to be a step forward, especially with the dual threat ability. So that's what I'm looking at him for this year. Really excited to see him with better weapons and see if they can help that O line a little as well. And it'd be exciting to see what he can do this year. Geno, for now, I think is an A tier quarterback based at least going into this season. Because last year he easily was an A tier player. And I don't think he's going to play worse necessarily this year. But we'll just have to see what happens. I think he's a really good passer of the football. Full transparency, I am a Seahawks fan, but I also was hugely against Geno starting for us going into the year. I honestly wanted Drew Lock because I thought he brought more upside, but I was very wrong. Geno's a good player. I think it's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFC. I think he's going to perform similarly to Dak, but way more consistent in my opinion. I think Dak's highs are going to be probably higher than Geno's highs, but I think Dak's lows are way lower than Geno's lows. And I think that brings him to a similar echelon. I think he's a kind of mid-range to mid to low end A tier quarterback. So that's what I think. I think he is slightly better than Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott, but Daniel Jones is a little worse than Dak. And I think Geno's a little better than Dak. That's how I'm separating that right now. We'll see how it turns out. Jared Goff, dude, I think people underrate Jared Goff so much. I'm putting him as a low-end A-tier quarterback. He played so good last year. Doesn't turn the ball over bad. He's a very consistent starter, very good player in a system when he gets good protection. I think he's a low-end A-tier quarterback. Taylor Heinicke, C-tier, pretty clear. Good backup. Low-end starter. Justin Herbert. Ooh, I'm putting Justin Herbert at the top A so far. I do not quite think he's an S-tier quarterback because I think you need to win more to get there. That's just my opinion. But he's been a great talent, and I think he's got the potential to be S tier if he can really start throwing things together. And I know wins are a team stat and stuff like that, but you just at a certain point the team has to make it over the hump, and the teams with the S tier quarterbacks have made it over that wild card hump so far. So that's how I'm ranking him. Hendon Hooker, I think he's going to be a C tier quarterback. He's coming off an injury, so I think if he had to play in his rookie year, I think he'd be in that C tier, low end starter, high end backup quality player. I think he has the ability to develop further into a solid starter in his career, but for now, that's where I'd put him. Sam Howell, I think I'm going to do the same thing. He played a little bit at the end of last season. He had like one game, and he played solid in that game, and they're going to give him a chance, it looks like, this year, but I think he's a low-end starter right now. Maybe he could show that he has more in the tank, but I think he's a low-end starter, high-end backup for now, and we'll see what happens with his career. Jalen Hurts is going to S tier. He earned it. He played so well this last year. Between his arm and legs, he's a great player. Nothing else to say. They made it to the Super Bowl for a reason. It was a great roster, and Jalen Hurts played phenomenal. Jimmy Garoppolo is the definition of a B-tier quarterback. I think him and Derek Carr, the fact that the Raiders got rid of Derek Carr to replace him with Jimmy G is actually hilarious because I think they're very similar players overall. I think Carr has higher upside, actually, but Jimmy's probably more consistent. So that's just a funny little thing. Kirk is easily kind of in that mid range of A-tier quarterbacks. He plays so good every year, and he's just underrated, I think. But really good player. I think he's in that kind of mid end of A-tier there for sure. Kyler, I'm gonna put him. I'm gonna put him in B because he was injured last year. He's gonna be injured in this year. It's for 23 season specifically, and he's gonna play like maybe half the season. If he plays, I think he'll play at a B tier level, which is kind of a mid season. I don't think too much is gonna happen there, but it's not necessarily gonna be his fault. It's just that there's just not much going on there. Let's see, Lamar Jackson, bro. I think he's an A tier quarterback so comfortably. I think that he has the capability to compete to be an S tier quarterback. We'll see what happens with his situation. Again, the Ravens don't have great weapons. I know they just added Odell, but he's going to be turning 31 in season, is coming off of multiple injuries. And simply, I just think has lost a step. I think he's going to be a good contributing player, but I don't think he should be a wide receiver one that you're leaning on that heavily. So tough, but I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. I believe in Lamar, and I think that any team that has him going has a shot to do something decent. Will Levis, again, I think I view him better than Hendon Hooker. Actually, as a first-year starter, I think Hendon Hooker would be more consistent, but Will Levis has a higher upside for sure. He has a huge arm, lots of talent, but I wouldn't want him starting year one because I think he just needs time to develop to really take advantage of his tools. Jordan Love, he's going to go somewhere in this C tier. I think that he has honestly potential to be moving to the B tier. Honestly, I think he could be a solid starter, and I think he at the end of the day probably will end up being there because I personally believe that he's a good player. He's sat behind Rodgers for so long, but I don't think they have the best weapon core. Their O-line's good, but I don't know how I feel about it. But I think low end starter, high end backup seems like a good fit for him for now, especially his first year in the league. He's going to make mistakes, but first year starting in the league to clarify. He's going to make mistakes, but I think overall he's going to be okay. But low end starter for the first year because there's just too many guys I put above him. Mac Jones, I think he's a C tier guy for now. We'll see what happens. I don't trust their coaching staff to get the best out of him. I think he's the ability to be a very solid B tier quarterback, and he was that his rookie year. I don't know what happened. They just have a coaching shambles, and I don't trust their staff at all. Patrick Mahomes, crown. He's the guy. I mean, hell, if I was doing this, the most realistic way it'd be Patrick Mahomes. Then these guys would get forced. It'd just be him alone in his own S tier, and then we'd have to do a different A, and then it'd be like a quasi B. It just you have to add an own tier. It's like S plus would be Patrick Mahomes, and then it'd go down. So yeah, man, it's crazy, man. He's his own league. He's a great player. I think he's a step ahead of everyone. He's the best. So I think anyone who argues that he's not the best quarterback in the league is a fan of one of the other guys or delusional. That's just my opinion. He's a great player. Other guys are great too, but he's Patrick Mahomes. He's got it for now. Matt Ryan, I don't even know if he'll be in the league this year, but if he is, to me, he's a very low end starter or high end backup kind of player at best. I don't really see much else. Davis Mills, I think, also falls into this. He's a low end starter. I think he did good given his circumstance, and I really think that it's just tough luck the way that things fell for him. Kenny Pickett, man, I'm gonna put him at the high end of C. I think he has the ability to creep into B this year. I really do think he's solid. But there's just again looking at tiers of guys, and maybe I'll move things around and see what happens as we get going. But further into this list, but I think he's going to be a very solid player, but not great. I think he's a high end here and kind of blurring to the bottom of B, but not quite there yet. Brock Purdy, he's going to be a B tier quarterback this year if he starts or is healthy in time and everything like that. He's just consistent, smart with the ball, and takes care of things the way he needs to. So that's how I view him. Anthony Richardson, this is a tough one. I think at minimum he's a high end C, potential to be low end B as a first year starter, but I think high end C would be where he would be if he had to start this year because he is a raw prospect in a sense. He isn't developed yet. He needs time to sit. I think there's just a lot going on there that he needs to develop and take care of, but I just don't think he'd be there yet to be a good starter. But I think his running ability alone puts his like floor kind of similar to where Justin Fields was last year. But I think, he has the ability to creep up to near, I think what Fields would be next year, I think is what he can be in 2 years. But we'll see what happens there. I could bite my tongue, but I think he's going to be electric running the ball if he starts at all. But I think best for him would be to be one of the best backups in the league because I think he needs a year to develop, maybe two, but just a year at least to sit and just soak up and get into the system, learn the league a bit. Desmond Ridder, I'm going to put him in that C tier. He hasn't had a real shot yet. He didn't do the worst ever, but I think he's a good backup or low end starter. We'll see what happens this year. Aaron Rodgers, he's going in A tier. He's just a great player. He really is. Don't know what else to say about it, man. He's a great player. He had a down year last year, and I think if he's on the Jets with good weapons like that, I think he's going to play good. Russell Wilson, I'm going to put as a high end B to low end A. I think that Sean Payton's going to maximize his abilities for sure. I would put him in A comfortably, but I think that there's just if I'm going just this year production and such alone, I think that most of these guys will be better than him, just production wise. We'll see what happens, but I could see him easily blending into this A group this coming year. Matthew Stafford, I think he's going to be in the B tier, somewhere in the middle of B tier, low end B tier, whatever happens. I just don't know. He's coming off an injury. He's getting older. He was really good 2 years ago, but then horrible last year. We'll just see what happens. But I think he falls into a similar category to Russell Wilson, but I think Russell Wilson will have a better season than Matthew Stafford. But we'll just see what happens. CJ Stroud, I think he'd be a low end B tier quarterback if he had to start year one because I think he's very accurate, very solid, efficient player. But I don't know what else really I'd say. I think he's again great player, but I don't know. We'll I'll see what I feel at the end of this. But I think he's going to be a good, okay, capable starter year one if he has to start. All right, Ryan Tannehill. I think he's a high end C tier quarterback. I don't think he's quite B, but he isn't actively tank your team, but he isn't lifting up in any way. You could argue low end B, but I see him as a high end C player. But I don't know, that's just me. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is going to be an A tier quarterback this year. I really do. I think he's going to ascend even further. Last year, I'd say high end B was what he was last year with a strong back half of the season. But I think he's really going to show up this year and take another step forward. Kyle Trask, I haven't seen anything. I don't have any reason specifically to believe that he'll be special. Maybe he'll have a chance to be a good backup, but I don't know. For now, I see him firmly as a backup quarterback. Trey Lance, I think he needs a real shot. I don't know how he'll turn out. I think you just gotta wait and see, but I hope he gets another opportunity one of these days soon. Tua, I view as a high end B tier quarterback. I know that a lot of people want him in A tier probably, or some people probably hate him, but I think he's a strong B tier quarterback. I truly don't think he can elevate a team. I think he can throw on time, in rhythm, in a good scheme, which is what he has, and I think that's why he can be successful and they can have a good team, a really good team with him at quarterback. But I don't think it's because of him at quarterback, if that makes sense. I think a lot of these A-tier guys, I believe that they have a good team because not only do they have a good circumstance around them, because every quarterback needs a somewhat good circumstance to perform, but they can also do things that make that team specifically better than it would be without them. I don't see Tua doing that. I think a lot of on-time, really accurate quarterbacks, like a lot of these guys in B tier, if they were trained in this scheme, like I think Brock Purdy could literally be trained to do a lower end version of what Tua did last year, but Tua has already injury concerns and everything as well. I don't know. He's very good at what he does. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks at just on-time anticipation, accurate throws. But these guys bring more upside. That's just what I think with arm strength, overall physical talent. Sean Watson, bro. I don't know. I think he'll shake off a little rust and end up in a low-end B-tier quarterback at least this year, but we'll just have to see. I'm not sure what to think of him. Honestly, I really don't. I don't know. Carson Wentz, I could literally see putting him in D tier because he's just so weird, but I'm putting him low in C because that's just what I think. Bryce Young, similarly to CJ Stroud, I'm gonna put them right next to each other. I think they're both going to be like almost very okay players their first year in the league, but I don't see them being lighting it up and being an A-tier rookie because that just doesn't happen very often at all. It's extremely rare to have a rookie quarterback that's just insane. I think they'll adjust to the league and be an okay, capable starter. Zach Wilson, man, he's played too bad for me to do anything other than this. I truly want to believe that he could be a C tier, B tier quarterback because he has so much talent. He really does. And I think sitting behind A-Rod will be good for him this year. But as of right now, I see nothing other than a backup quarterback. I think he needs to be a backup and sit so desperately just to chill the fuck out, honestly. But we'll see what happens there, man. Well, let me know what you think of the rankings. I ended up with only 4 S-tier quarterbacks. You could argue I could throw a 5th in there maybe, but Justin Herbert would be hanging on to the back of that 5th. But I think there is a gap after these 4 to the next tier guys. Aaron Rodgers has the capability probably to fight for that 5th spot. Lamar, same thing. I'd say these top 3 here have a chance to fight to get there. this season, but I just don't see it quite happening. I think other than that, I think I really like how this turned out. We ended up really C heavy, but that's just because they included a lot of backups in this tier list and guys that are not going to be starting this year as well, but and rookies, of course. But I think this is pretty representative of how I view the league. There's a few specific guys that are elite at the top. There's a crowd in the middle. Top A tier is a little thinner. B and C are very crowded, and then D's. There's a lone group of guys that are included in this list that are going to be D guys, but I think this is perfect for how I think, man. But please give your feedback. If you hate one of these picks, let me know why. If you love the list, tell me what you agreed with specifically or why you think that my thought process worked out. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Just talking ball, learning about what I think about these things, and just having a discussion, man. That's what I want is discussions in the comments and seeing how these things turn out. But have a good day, guys. Peace.